Hey, it's challenge time again, and this time we're doing something that I think is going to be particularly fun. This time we're playing as a version of my second OC, AJ, who only believes in using gifted Pokemon. Yeah, sure. There's definitely nothing more to it than that. No gap in her knowledge that would explain why she only uses Pokemon that are already inside Pokeballs. She's also really impatient, so unless the Pokemon is already roughly battle ready by the time it's handed to her, and she doesn't really want to bother with it. So like if a Pokemon hatches from an egg, for example, like she might carry it with her for a while, but she's not actually going to use it in battle, right? And that means that there are 5 valid targets in this game for Pokemon that we can use. Target being entirely the wrong word, but I'm not going to re-record that line, so you're stuck with it. Which means we're going to have a pretty big team, which means this isn't going to be much of a challenge. Let's not kid ourselves here. So I'm going to impose some extra rules on myself to make this a little more interesting. So while you're watching some footage of me starting out the game, picking Totodile as I usually do, and naming it Jaws after my very first starter Pokemon, let's go over what those rules are going to be. Like I already said, a Pokemon that has to hatch from an egg, not going to use it, even if it's technically a gift. So no egg from the daycare person, no Togepi egg. I'm going to use Togepi a little bit for some out-of-battle stuff, but that's beside the point. And with the exception of one Pokemon later on, there's not going to be any catching in this challenge at all. And, like, the only reason that little bit of catching is going to have to happen is because, like, some of these Pokemon that we've got, they can't learn some of the HM moves we need. What that does mean, though, is because we have such a large team, one of the restrictions I'm going to impose on myself is that, if possible, the Pokemon on my team have to use the HMs that I need to use to complete the game. Which means I'm going to have Pokemon with Cut on them, and I'm going to have Pokemon with Strength on them when those moves aren't good. Like, Fly is fine and Surf is fine, for example, but, like, still, filling up slots with moves you can't get rid of. While I don't mind it as part of the franchise, it's going to make things harder. I am also going to do my best, given the wonky level scaling of the Generation 2 games, to follow a pretty common Nuzlocke rule, where I don't allow my Pokemon to level beyond the level of the next big boss's ace Pokemon. I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway with this, because, again, level scaling in this game is really hard, and I'm going to have one Pokemon for the first 2 gyms. That's going to make it hard to keep my level down. And with my final stipulation, I'm going to have to do a little bit of over-leveling here and there. But I'm going to try to keep to the lowest level possible. Let's put it that way. Which brings us to that final stipulation. Until I see the credits once, I am not allowed to evolve my Pokemon. Because this is not a Nuzlocke. I am not stuck with just the first Pokemon I come upon on each route. I don't run the risk of losing Pokemon permanently. So even with that level restriction that I imposed, this is still going to be pretty easy, if I let my Pokemon evolve, especially. But just like with my recent Fido run, I do want to use the evolved forms of these Pokemon at least a little bit. So I am going to let them evolve once I beat the league. In order to do the second half of the game, I'm going to let them evolve. Because, like, yeah, that's going to make the Kanto gym leaders trivial, but, like, they're the Kanto gym leaders in Generation 2. They weren't going to be much of a challenge anyway. Let's not kid ourselves here. That said, I do all the usual beginning stuff. I get a Pokemon from Professor Elm, as well as a task that he probably shouldn't have given to a 10-year-old. I get pushed around by a kid outside his window. I go to see Mr. Pokemon and find out about the egg and all that other stuff. And then I start my gym challenge. I leave home properly for the first time, and as I do, this guy approaches me and asks if I want him to show me how to catch Pokemon, but obviously I know how to catch Pokemon. Obviously. That is a skill that my character has. Like, she's grown up in this world. Why is that an ability that she would not possess, right? So I say no and go on with my life. And I definitely don't lack any life skills now for that reason. It's faster and easier to use Pokemon that are gifted to you, right? Yeah, that's why we're doing this. That's the reason. Anywho, this gives me one Pokemon in my battle against Faulkner. Well, I don't come into the battle with him at level 9 like I had originally shot for, that being the level of his ace Pokemon. I do enter his gym at level 9, so I consider this a win. So I defeat him, I get my first badge, and I move on, doing my best to battle as few Pokemon as possible on the way to the next town, while also collecting useful items and some phone numbers of characters that I thought, maybe they'll want to rematch me later, and I can use that to get some experience later on in the game when experience is kind of hard to come by. And yet, throughout this playthrough, I never got called for a rematch, even once, from any of these characters who usually offer rematches. Not once. And full disclosure, I actually recorded the majority of this challenge once already, prior to recording what you're seeing right now, and one of the later segments of the recording got corrupted, which is why I no longer use Camtasia to screen record anything that I can't just go back and do over again. I never should have been anyway, that's not really what Camtasia's for. Point is, I wanted to get this video out within a specific time frame, and that wasn't going to happen anymore because I lost that footage and I had to start over. So I got real tired of grinding later on in my recording of this playthrough, to the point that I started using some totally legitimate rare candies to level my Pokemon up to the level goals that I wanted them to be at. Because, frankly, this isn't a timed run. I'm not trying to complete this as fast as possible, so it doesn't really hurt anything to skip the grind, and it only helps, right? It only saves me time. It's not like I was using it to over-level all my guys to level 100 and just steamroll the game. But I was, at this point, not doing that yet, and yet by the time I reached the second gym to battle against Bugsy, I already out-leveled his ace, too. By only, a level, I think. I'm doing this voiceover mostly from memory. But I still out-leveled him a little bit. Not by a ton, though, and I'm going to have more Pokemon to spread my experience out across relatively soon, so this won't remain a problem for much longer. That said, and needless to say, since Totodile is a pretty sturdy Pokemon, Falkner and Bugsy don't really stand a chance against me. I'm showing it here with the battle against Bugsy, specifically, but Totodile gets Rage, which was a garbage move in Generation 1, but it's a fantastic move in Generation 2. It's a take on the various moves in this game that get stronger the more they're used. The thing about Rage being that the more you're hit, the more Rage counters are added to your Pokemon, and the more damage subsequent uses of Rage do. And because Totodile's fairly sturdy, and has pretty good physical attack anyway, Rage carries me through both of these early battles, and does work after this too. The problem is, once I beat Bugsy, I have to battle my rival. And my rival already has a Bayleaf. And while arguably the Chikorita line is the weakest starter line in these games, it has a high crit, decent power move that I am weak to. And my rival leads with a Ghost type, which is immune to Rage, so I can't start building up Rage at the very beginning of the battle, which puts me at a huge disadvantage going in. And I have to replay this battle multiple times, to the point that I just start allowing myself to get whited out over and over again, so that I can keep whatever experience I get defeating his first Pokemon over and over again. All things considered, even though there were some tough battles in this run, this is the one that gave me the most trouble, this second rival battle, set between the second gym and this game's obligatory forest section. I had to get myself all the way up to level 22, and after learning the move Bite, get enough flinch luck with Bite just to get past his Bayleaf. It was absolutely bonkers. This brings me to probably my favorite section in any Pokemon game, though, the section leading up to and just beyond Goldenrod City, kind of between the Ilex Forest and the National Park. And once I reach Goldenrod, I can move to the gatehouse north of Goldenrod, and I can talk to this guy here, who has a Spearow named Kenya, who I just kind of psychically know is here, and he wants to lend me Kenya so that I can use Kenya to deliver a letter to his friend, and I don't know where his friend is, and I don't care, because this is a Pokemon that somebody handed to me, and it's already in its Pokeball, which means I don't have to know how to throw a Pokeball. Not that I don't, But, if I didn't, this would be a way for me to get a Pokemon without knowing how to catch Pokemon. And so I add Kenya to my team. It was super easy. It was super easy to get this second Pokemon. I think this might actually be the fastest that any Pokemon trainer has gotten a second Pokemon, frankly. And even though it says here that Kenya is a boy Pokemon, Kenya is actually a girl, like canonically. So like that's established by the remakes. So I'm probably going to call Kenya she multiple times throughout this playthrough. Just fair warning. Unfortunately, though, Kenya is a tiny little glass cannon. She hits fairly hard, but can't really take a hit. And the next gym leader is Whitney, whose ace has a rock-type move as her signature move. So Kenya's not really going to help me a ton here. So I do level her up a bit to get her closer to Jaws' level by battling trainers south of Goldenrod in the Goldenrod Underground and a few trainers up north near the National Park, where I also go ahead and pick up the Quick Claw. And then I head in to battle Whitney and use Kenya to take on her first Pokemon, her Clefairy, saving Totodile for her ace. And at this point, Totodile was 4 levels over-leveled here, and I gave him Ice Punch from the department store, which is a pretty powerful move for this point in the game. And I still had to replay this battle a couple times before I finally managed to get the luck I needed to defeat Miltank. And by the luck I needed, I mean I had to freeze it. I had to get it to freeze. I had to inflict upon it the most broken status condition in these games before I could beat it. That's how OP this Miltank is. From here, though, I can initiate a sequence of events that allow me to get an Eevee from Bill, and I only have to backtrack considerably from the next town back to this one. It's a very easy process, not time-consuming at all. Even if I had walked just south of Goldenrod and ran into the first Pokemon I found and caught it, I don't think I could have caught a third Pokemon faster than getting this Eevee, which I named V, because if you rearrange the letters in Eevee's name, you can get the word V, and I don't know, I thought that was cute in the moment. And V here is an absolute monster. Like, Eevee's a really good Pokemon. I cannot stress that enough. I don't use just an unevolved Eevee very often. I usually just, like, get it to wherever I need it to be to evolve into whatever I want it to evolve into, and then use that whenever possible. But, like, Eevee itself is a solid Pokemon in and of itself. It deserves more love on its own. In fact, V the Eevee single-handedly swept the Kimono Girls' 5 evolutions. It was awesome. This earned me the move Surf, which I immediately taught to Jaws, obviously, because even though it's a special move being water type and Jaws is mainly a physical attacker, it still hits really hard, and a lot of Pokemon are way more vulnerable to special moves than they are physical moves. So either way, this is a huge boon for this point in the game. I actually think they probably give this to you a little too early in this game, frankly. This means that I'm equipped with Surf already going into the rival battle in the tower here in Mahogany. Is it Mahogany Town? Oh, I really should know this because I really like it. And thankfully at this point, that egg that Mr. Pokemon had for me, it hatches into a Togepi, which I'm not going to be using in battle, but it can learn Rock Smash, and there is a place to Rock Smash in this tower, and so I'm able to do that. Pretty useful, actually. Not even the last use I'm going to get out of it in this playthrough either, but we'll see that later. And as crazy as it sounds, even though I have a pretty sturdy Totodile, and I have an Eevee that hits pretty hard and is also fairly durable, and I have Kenya, who is a pretty powerful glass cannon, I still have to battle my rival more than once here. I once again, just like against Whitney, have to get lucky here with a freeze against the opponent's ace in order to defeat it. Which is cool. It means it came down to our 2 starters, because the only way I have to freeze something is with Ice Punch. But man, was it close. This lets me set free the legendary beasts, which sends Morty back to his gym, which allows me to go challenge him. And at this point, I have 2 normal type Pokemon, which shut down a lot of his potential moves, because he is stupid and only really has ghost-type attacking options on his Pokemon. And I also have Bite and Pursuit on Jaws and Kenya. So this isn't a terribly hard gym battle. I had to battle him a couple times, but it wasn't that difficult. And at this point, I'm pretty on par with his level. So I can't really blame over-leveling for this at this point either. I also taught V at this point. I taught V Mud Slap from Faulkner's gym. So I have that to use against the ghosts too, and considering a lot of their best moves are low accuracy, it really helped out. This gives me the TM for Shadow Ball, which I immediately teach to V because I always teach Shadow Ball to my EVs. And this is going to help me a lot as the playthrough goes on too. It actually becomes kind of a staple move for my party. From here, with Surf and the ability to use Surf outside of battle to travel over water, the game really opens up. I can go west or I can go east. You guys know from my last Crystal version challenge that I prefer to go west here. It's the way that makes the most sense, story-wise, after all, in my opinion. So I head west to Olivine City, again trying to avoid as many trainers as possible on the way, and using repels to avoid wild Pokemon when possible, because I don't want to level up any more than I have to. I come into town, I get told off by my rival because he's a dick. I stop at the cafe to get strength so that I can use it in Chuck's gym when I get to Cianwood City. I head to Cianwood City, go straight to the medicine shop? Pharmacy. It would be called a pharmacy, wouldn't it? Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. And weirdly enough, I didn't know you could actually buy stuff here. I didn't know that it was like a shop. It's a shop, though, and I only know that because the dialogue to give me the secret potion didn't pop up. Because I forgot to climb the lighthouse and talk to Jasmine. That's no big deal. I get Fly after beating Chuck. So, I just decided to go fight Chuck. Beat Chuck while I'm here. Get Fly, then I can fly back to Olivine City, talk to Jasmine, then fly back here, get the potion, then fly back and give it to Jasmine. It'll take a little bit longer than it otherwise would have, but it's not that big of a detour. And I don't have to feel like too much of an idiot either. What does cause me to feel like a bit of an idiot is getting completely curb stomped by the first gym trainer in Chuck's gym. That didn't feel good. So I end up spawning back in Olivine City. I climb the lighthouse like I was supposed to and get the quest from Jasmine, and then come back here and get the potion. And then I fight my way through Chuck's gym again. But this time I actually, do my best not to suck at it. And I actually end up reaching Chuck and defeating him. And it wasn't even that hard. Like, straight up, with as hard as that Hitmonlee hits, I think his gym trainers might be a little tougher than he is. Like, his Poliwrath can be a little tricksy, but just so long as you're careful, it really isn't much of a threat. Like, his signature move is Dynamic Punch, which is like, if your primary way of dealing damage was to, like, use Hypnosis, it's absolute garbage. Like, I can't think of any rational person who would use Dynamic Punch as the linchpin in their strategy. Fortunately, while I'm here in Cianwood City, though, there is something else I can do. Just magically, again, I know that there's this trainer in this house here who had all his Pokemon stolen by my rival. He has one Pokemon left. He's very, very worried that it's going to be stolen. So, of course, I steal it and add it to my team. This is Shucky, our new team member, who I technically already had in the gym battle against Chuck, but it didn't really end up doing me much good, so I didn't really feel the need to mention it. Kenya kind of carried in this battle, actually, believe it or not. She hits pretty hard, even if she refuses to put down that letter. It makes it real hard to give her held items when she won't put down that stinking letter. But that's part of her charm, so I'm cool with it. Fortunately, because I psychically knew that Shucky was here waiting for me, I did pick up some items on the way to immediately use on him. I gave him Dig and Rollout through TMs that I picked up near Goldenrod. Just to give him some extra options. He doesn't hit super hard, so like I don't end up using Dig much, for example. But Rollout is just like super powerful. You'll see what I mean later on in the playthrough. It is a bonkers powerful move. So I use that a lot. This brings me back to Jasmine, though, where I give her the secret potion, and then she goes to wait for me in her gym. And this is where I thought I'd use Dig. I thought I'd use Dig against her Magnemites, and maybe I'd be able to do enough damage to knock out her Magnemites with Shucky and keep my other guys fresh. That didn't happen. But, thankfully Totodile is basically tailor-made to defeat this gym. So, it wasn't that hard to beat her, honestly. Like, I had to switch Jaws out a little bit in the middle of the battle to preserve him for later. But, he did strike the final blow. This gives me 5 gym badges? Is that 5? Or is that 6? 6. It's 6. It gives me 6 gym badges, which means it's time to head off and fight Price. After I do a bunch of Team Rocket story stuff with Lance that, for whatever reason, I always forget is here until I literally step into town and see the building where you enter their hideout from. But as a prerequisite to this is where I was talking about I would have to catch one Pokemon at some point. AJ heads up to the Lake of Rage because she hears that some crazy stuff's going on up there. And she finds herself a red Gyarados. And she's like, you know what? It may be way harder than just waiting until a Pokemon is handed to me. Like, way more time consuming, but I'm gonna go try to catch that Pokemon. So she goes out and she battles that red Gyarados, weakens it, and then she goes and takes out an Ultra Ball. And she totally knows what to do with it. She totally knows what to do with that Ultra Ball. But fortunately, because this made the process simpler, as she is getting ready to do whatever she would do with that Ultra Ball, the red Gyarados trips over a Magikarp and falls into the Ultra Ball and catches itself. And again, per the rules of this challenge, I'm not going to be using this Pokemon in battle. It's here to use Waterfall and Whirlpool, because none of my other Pokemon can learn Waterfall, and even I think Jaws can learn Whirlpool. It sucks. I don't want to put it on any of my other guys. But between that very fortunate accidental capture and Lance's help in the Team Rocket hideout, we're able to drive Team Rocket out of town, which brings Price back to his gym, or moves the guy out from front of the door. I don't remember how they keep you from going into the gym prior to the story beat, frankly, because I never think to check. And weirdly enough, on the sliding ice puzzle in his gym, my brain only short circuits for a few seconds before I remember how to get to him pretty much directly. And so I'm in and out of here in only like 12 minutes instead of my usual 35. And frankly, it's Price. He's not very good. So defeating him was not an issue at all. Like, I'm showing the battle here for you guys, but I don't feel any need to describe it. It wasn't hard. From here, I get a call to go and fight Team Rocket some more. So I go do that. Again, this is another thing I'm not going to dwell on. Like, whereas some of these guys are kind of a threat, the most threatening one is the one that has a whole team of self-destructors. But I have a Shuckle, so he's literally no threat to me at all. Literally the only battle worth talking about here, and the one that I'm probably going to put under this voiceover here, is another battle against the rival, where, again, he has an evolved grass Pokemon, and I only have a Totodile as my ace. But fortunately at this point, I have a Shuckle that's level 34 and has Rollout, so I don't have to worry about Meganium anymore. Like, it literally does not do enough damage to Shuckle fast enough to outpace Rollout. It will never be a threat to me ever again. This, of course, opens the way to the final gym, so I go to do that. And again, weirdly enough, when I get to the ice puzzles in the ice cave, my brain doesn't short circuit hardly at all, and I'm able to get past them with relative ease. I know, I'm surprised too. And before you know it, I'm challenging Claire. Like actually challenging Claire and not just thinking about it. But let me tell you guys, fighting Claire with a team made up entirely of unevolved misfits is a little hard. Like, my best answer against dragons is Jaws' Ice Punch. And most of the ace dragons here are part water type at the very least. So, makes that hard. I end up having to reset several times here, trying out different strategies. Starting out initially with Shucky, trying to build up some rollouts to take care of these guys. But eventually settling on trying to do as much damage with Kenya and V on her early Pokemon first. And then switching to Shucky later to start to do extra damage kind of mid-battle. Eventually building up enough rollouts against Kingdra to outlast it pretty much the same way Shucky has defeated literally any other opponent that she's defeated throughout the course of this playthrough since I've gotten her. This really goes to show that Shucky isn't the guy you send out first to soften the opponent up. She's a real headliner. She's somebody that you keep in reserve because she wins battles entirely on her own. Hopefully I'll remember that if I ever have to fight anybody else who uses Dragon-type Pokemon. This, of course, does not get me the final gym badge, though. I have to go be on a game show or something first. But then I get it, and I'm able to move on to the Pokemon League. And I don't know for sure how they usually do the level cap for the Pokemon League in like a Nuzlocke style thing. But I decided that since Lance's ace is level 50, I'm gonna go with the level cap of level 50. But first, finally, after all this time, it's finally time to get my final team member. The final team member who can battle, anyway. Because again, super easy, makes way more sense than just going and catching a Pokemon in a Pokeball in the wild. I know that there's a guy hanging out in a cave who, if I defeat him, will give me his son. He's a very strange looking child. Kyo Jr., his name is Kyo, obviously. He's a weird looking child, and he can use Pokemon attacks, which makes him a Pokemon, I guess. He's really low level, and he's a baby Pokemon, so he sucks. But I used some more of those totally legitimate rare candies to get him up to snuff with my other Pokemon. Planning to mostly just use him to get some clean switch-ins for my other guys. At least for now. He'll be a little more useful later, but at least for now. That's mostly where I'm sitting with him. From here, I make the journey to the Pokemon League. I battle my rival one last time in Victory Road, where he actually manages to take down most of my team. Like, you know that thing I said about Meganium never being a threat to me again? I was wrong. It bodied my entire team, basically. And by bodied, I mean it body slammed my entire team, basically. And that led to a real cool situation again, where it came down to my starter against his, and I just barely managed to come out on top with Ice Punch. It was by far probably the coolest final rival fight that I could have asked for in this playthrough, honestly. At this point, though, with all my guys at level 50, I go in and try to take on the Pokemon League. I know that Will is going to start off with a Flying-type Pokemon, that he has 2 Flying-type Pokemon, and a Jinx, which is Ice-type. So I figure, at the very least, I should try rollout strats. And they work fairly well, but it ends up being a team effort to defeat him, which brings me to my battle against Koga, where again, since he has a lot of bug types, I decide to try rollout strats here too. And they also work really well, because at this point, I have taught Shucky Rest, which means she can basically outlast anybody. It was hard, but I managed to get past him too. But then, something really weird happened. I went into the empty room right behind Koga's room, but instead of being empty this time, there was this really strong guy in there. He had fighting-type Pokemon and a random Onix, and he just wrecked me, man. I tried several times to get past him, and I just couldn't. Maybe they should make him an Elite 3 member too. They'd have to change the name of it to the Elite 4, I guess, but I don't know, I think that sounds pretty good, and they should do that. Point is, though, I'm not going to be able to get past him at level 50. It's just not going to happen. So, I level my guys up 5 more times each, and then start over again. Come back in and get past Will, basically the same way I got past him last time. Get past Koga, basically the same way I got past him last time. Then I move on to that strong guy again. And again, it's a bit of a struggle. But with teamwork and determination and the proper application of moves to target the correct stats on my opponent's Pokemon, I managed to defeat him. Those 5 levels really did make a difference. This brings me to Karen, though, and Karen is tough. She starts off with a Pokemon who can solo entire teams entirely on its own, Umbreon. Not the way she uses it, but like theoretically. But also kind of not theoretically, because, again, I'm using a team of entirely unevolved misfits. This thing is a real threat to me. It can really mess up my accuracy. It can outlast basically any of my guys. I'm not even sure that Shucky can do enough damage to this thing before it does enough damage to her to knock her out. I need a way to get past this thing as quickly as possible, and so I come up with the biggest brain play of all time. Frankly, I think I'm a true genius for thinking of this. I teach Dynamic Punch to Jaws. Obviously, Dynamic Punch is an awesome move, and anyone would be an absolute fool not to hinge their entire strategy on its use. And while I do have to reset once, my second time fighting Karen, I'm able to Dynamic Punch her Umbreon, doing a ton of damage, and also confusing it. It hits itself, and then I knock it out, and sweep the rest of her team pretty freaking easily, honestly. Like, her Houndoom gave me a little bit of trouble, but frankly, Umbreon, really the only one that you really have to worry about on this team, in this generation. This brings me to Lance, a dragon user, and of course, because I've never learned anything before in my entire life, I decided I'm going to start with Shuckle to kind of soften up his team first. And I can't beat him like that. I lose a few times. It isn't until I remember how I end up using Shucky against Claire that I realize what I have to do to beat him. I soften up his team with V and Kenya, then bring Shucky in the middle, and then mop up with Jaws. It isn't until I remember that it's V that is the best lead against a Dragon-type user, and not Shucky, that I'm able to beat him. In fact, going from V to Kenya to Shucky, all 3 of them do major work in this battle. My team may be made up of entirely unevolved misfits, but when you put those misfits in the right order, they really clean house. This, of course, gets me in the Hall of Fame, which means I can use more of those entirely legitimate rare candies to level these guys up a couple more times, so that the ones that can evolve do evolve. V is now the only Pokemon I have who can evolve that hasn't evolved yet, and I have no idea what time of day it'll be when he does decide to evolve, so I have no idea which Pokemon he's going to turn into. It's going to be really fun to see. I have some ideas for strategies for both versions. The strategy if he turns into an Espeon literally just being teach it Psychic and then kill everything. So I'm kind of hoping I end up with an Umbreon. Umbreon's a little more tactical, which makes it a little more fun in my opinion, in these kinds of challenges at least. But of course, this does unlock the Kanto portion of the game, and like I said before, the Kanto portion is going to be pretty trivial in this playthrough. I'm a little worried about Surge, because my ace Pokemon and Kenya are both weak to electricity. But at this point, I've really started to level up Kyo Jr. It has evolved into a Hitmonchan. I don't teach it any punch moves, because I don't really end up needing to, because it hits pretty stinking hard, and I have already given it Headbutt. But I also give it Hidden Power. Or maybe I gave it Hidden Power earlier, but only really started using it here. I don't remember. Point is, it has Hidden Power. It's Hidden Power Ground. And, yeah, this little guy who has done effectively nothing since I got him just bodies Surge's entire team. It was awesome. This brings me to Sabrina, where I try to win with Kyo Jr. It doesn't work very well. Like, it becomes apparent just fighting her gym trainers that that's never going to happen, so I just sweep with V, go and take a brief detour to kick Erica's butt. Then I head to the power plant to get the power plant quest, unlocking my ability to unlock Misty, who I defeat next. I go turn in the power plant quest, giving myself access to Pokeflute Radio, which lets me wake up the sleeping Snorlax. And just in the nick of time, finally, I get Kenya to put down the letter. And that's very fortunate, because Kenya has learned the move Thief. I gave it to her way, way, way long ago. in place of Pursuit, which, I mean, neither one of them are good moves, but Thief is better, at least. And because she finally put down that stinking letter, she has room in her beak to thief the leftovers right off of that Snorlax's body. And I'm able to give it to Shucky. Don't you just love it when ladies help out ladies? Because now, with the leftovers attached, Shucky's basically invincible. Especially once I also pick up the TM for Curse, and give Shucky Curse as well. Because she's already not moving before anything. Literally anything. So losing speed doesn't matter. Raising her already incredible defense and actually giving her halfway decent attack is a win-win. Like, rollout's already broken. If I can start it at fairly solid damage and then move up from there, it's even better. It's during all of this that V finally battles enough, and that he loves me enough to finally evolve. And, just like I hoped, I end up with an Umbreon, which, just like Shucky, is also really tanky and hard to knock out. So, after I defeat Koga's daughter Janine and get Toxic, I teach Toxic to V, because even though he still hits pretty hard, even as an Umbreon, with as durable as he is, giving him a move like Toxic is like giving him an entire second win condition. It's why I have been super bummed for a very long time that Toxic is no longer a TM in the Pokemon franchise, though apparently it's coming back as a TM in the Scarlet and Violet DLC. If that's true, and Umbreon can still learn it, I'm very excited. Very excited. That's beside the point. From here, finishing Kanto is trivial. I visit the ruins of Cinnabar Island to activate Blue. Then I head off to the Seafoam Islands to fight Blaine. Defeat him very, very easily. Then move on to Blue, who is a bit more of a struggle, but that's because I purposely tried to make it harder. Specifically trying to defeat his Rhydon with Shucky. And like, yeah, she can outlast most things, but Rhydon was a little too much for her. But once she's knocked out, that self-imposed limit just goes out the window, and I'm able to mop up the rest of his team using more standard battle methods. Which of course unlocks Red, which means to get through the section of Mount Silver that requires Flash, I have to go fish an old friend out of the PC. I go and get that Togepi that hatched from that egg all that time ago. Teach it Flash that I definitely remembered to get my first time through the game. I definitely didn't have to go all the way back to Sprout Tower and fight through Sprout Tower with guys who were in the high 50s, low 60s. And against Red, I decided to set my level cap at level 72, since that's on par with his guys, but not stronger than them. I figure that'll make the challenge, challenging. And I head into the battle starting with Kyo Jr. to use Hidden Power on Pikachu. And then I switch to V against Snorlax, thinking that between Toxics to bait out rests and hitting with what has become V's signature move, Headbutt, I'll be able to do enough damage to the relatively physically frail Snorlax to knock it out. But instead, Snorlax ends up just owning V, unfortunately. Which really sucks, because V was kind of my MVP for a lot of the battles in this playthrough. I kind of was hoping that he'd end the playthrough with a little more dignity than that. But, again, going for roughly the same strategy, the Outlast Snorlax strategy. I bring out Shucky, expecting to at least knock out Snorlax and maybe one more Pokemon with Shucky. And then I sweep the rest of Red's team with just Shucky. I end up having to use only 3 of my guys. It was, frankly, really embarrassing for Red. And if I had known that it was going to be that stinking easy, I would have set the level cap lower. And that is the story of how a team of 5 misfit Pokemon and their trainer, who definitely knows how to use Pokeballs, I don't know why you would think otherwise, managed to defeat the strongest trainer in the stinking world. And this, that I'm showing you right now, is the story of how she went home and played with the Pokemon dolls that her mom bought with her money throughout the course of her adventure. I'd completely forgotten that this happens. Like, I usually just, tune out the mom buying you stuff as background noise in playthroughs of this game. This is actually pretty cute. I actually really like this. Also, I didn't know you could remove your bed. Did you know you could remove your bed? That's really weird. This playthrough was loads of fun. It wasn't really hard, ever. Like there was never anything even close to the string of absolute bonkers resets that I had against Gita in my Fido playthrough, for example. But it was still pretty fun. I've never really imposed this many rules on myself in a playthrough before. So, trying to keep them as best as possible. I mean, I was a little loosey-goosey with them because, again, this is all for funsies, right? But trying to keep as close to them as possible was really interesting and added a lot to the experience. And frankly, I've always wanted to do a playthrough where I use Kenya and Shucky because they're the trade Pokemon that aren't really trade Pokemon, right? I always found that really cool. The circumstance in which you get them is so unique, right? And also, Spearo's just a neat Pokemon, and Shuckle especially is a really cool Pokemon with a really unique way of playing the game. So, using Shucky especially was a real treat, and I'm probably going to use it again in later playthroughs of this game just in my free time. I don't know which challenge I'm going to do next. If you have ideas, please put them in the comments. I'd really like to hear them. I have a couple of ideas, though, of other challenges that will probably require quite a few rules. Of other challenges that will probably require having quite a few self-imposed rules to really make them interesting. Ones that I wasn't really sure if I was going to do them or not, because it would have been complicated. But after having done this, I think I can definitely pull them off, so I'll probably do one of those. So yeah, look forward to that, I guess. In the meantime, though, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.